This
Just give me a second.
conference
Okay.
will now be recorded.
All right. So, as you all know, we want to make sure that we meet on Saturdays and Sundays on weekends, and we start working on the automation part of it, or the automation part of a syllabus out here. So, until now, let's see what do we know, and let's see what can we learn today. So, let me open up my PowerShell console. So, let me open up something called PowerShell IC, and let me put it this way out here. So, we firstly started with Windows partial. We understood things like what is a for loop, and then we said what is a for each loop. Where do you implement a for versus a for each loop? And then we went ahead and said what is module installation in PowerShell, or how do you install module called AZ module in PowerShell out here. And I see some people are getting those errors out there, but my suggestion would be to reinstall the module once again and restart your system, and let me know if you still get any error. I'll make sure to and try to correct the same thing out there. And after the module installation, we saw how to create a resource group, how to create multiple resource groups using for and for each out here. We also understood how to get a specific resource group, how to check whether a particular resource group exists or not, and so on and so forth. So this is where we are with the automation part of it. So any questions before I get started here? Anyone, any questions before we go ahead and let's say set the context to today's session out here? Anyone, any questions? Okay, so let's get started once again then. So firstly, this is what I want to do today. I want to get all the resource groups that are there in my Azure portal, guys. So let's try to, let's say, be interactive in this session to understand, and I just want to see whether you understand the commands out here or not. So can anyone tell me what is the command to get all the resource groups on my Azure portal? Can anyone tell me how do I get started here?
Sorry, to get all
Can
the
anyone?
resource groups.
That's correct.
With AZ.resource groups.
Get az dot resource group. Let's see. So get hyphen. That's something the command I need to pass. It's not az dot resource groups. It's az resource group. This is as simple as it. So I want to get something, and I want to, let's say, go ahead and get the resource groups out here. And before I do this, I'll just do a connect hyphen az account. So I'm going ahead and doing something called as a connect hyphen az account out here. And firstly, I'll run this piece of it. And once I run this particular piece of the command, this is going to ask me to sign into the Azure portal. I'll sign into the Azure portal, and it will go ahead and log me in. Now, by default, what is happening is that, see my account, right? I am a user who's part of multiple accounts. This is a different subscription altogether that I have, a different tenant ID altogether that I have out here. But what I want to do is that I want to log into this particular subscription called, or I want to run my commands against this particular subscription called Visual Studio Enterprise subscription. So what I can do is that I can copy this out. Again, this is something that you do not have to do, but if you are working in an organization, this is something you might have to do sometimes. So I will run one more command called set hyphen az context. So I'm telling what is the subscription, or what is, let's say, the subscription against which I want to run these commands. And I'll say subscription. So set hyphen az context subscription in quotes. I'll just pass on the name of the subscription that I do have. And the reason I'm passing this in quotes is that there are a lot of white spaces in the name of the subscription. And if you do not pass it in quotes, even white spaces are considered to be a character, and this command might fail. So I'll just go ahead set this out. And now I'm doing a set hyphen easy context. And once this is done, I am now working as a part of, let's say, this particular subscription called Visual Studio Enterprise subscription out here. So this is how I go ahead and connect to the portal firstly. So before I go ahead create any objects or get any objects on the Azure portal, I will have to log inside the Azure portal. And once I log into the Azure portal, I can now start running my commands. And the very first command that I want to do is that I want to get all the resource groups. And if I want to get all the resource groups, the command is just going to be get hyphen a resource group. And if I just execute this line, so I can highlight this line or I can just place my cursor here. And if I just execute this out, it's just going to tell, okay, fine, I'll go to your Azure portal. I'll get all your resource groups. And here what happened is that it just did not return me any value out here. It just did not give me any value out here as such. Why do you think this is, guys? Why do you think we do not have a value out here as such?
Are there any resource groups? We don't have.
On the Azure portal, let's check that out. Let's
Yeah.
see. So let's see if I have any resource groups out here. No, I don't have any resource groups, and that's the very reason that it just went ahead and it just returned me something like a null value out here as such. So it just went ahead and gave me a null value. Let's say I have resource groups. So I'll just create two resource groups out here using the Azure portal. I'll say test01 and I'll create this resource group in ECS2. I'll say review and create. I'll say create this out. And I'll create one more resource group in a different location called Central US. And I'll say something like test02. And I'll just go ahead and create this particular test02 in Central US out here. So I have two different resource groups right now called test01 and then something called as test02 right now. Now if I rerun my command, it's not going to return a null value, rather it's going to return an object. So it's just not returning the name of the resource group, it's returning the entire property value of the resource group, like what is the resource group name, in which location is this particular resource group a part of, what is the provisioning state, meaning is the resource group really ready. This is for test 1. Then I have something similar for test 2, wherein it is telling what is the name of the resource group, what is the location, what is the let's say ID of this particular resource group. Is the resource group provisioned, like is it succeeded, is it, let's say, in a provisioning state out here as such. This is what it is really telling me out here right now with this simple command called get hyphen az resource group out here. And this command is returning an entire object which has some properties called resource group name, called location, called provisioning state, called tags, which means what I can do is that I can store all these values in a variable, something like properties, let's say equal to. So I'm equating this particular, let's say, get hyphen az resource group. I'm telling that whatever output that I have, or whatever, let's say, output that I'm getting from this particular get hyphen az resource group, please store it in this particular variable called properties. So if I now call that particular property called dollar properties, that particular dollar properties is storing all these values. Now what I can do is that if you see this particular properties right now is an object in itself. It has multiple resource group names and etc. Let's say that I only want to see what is the resource group names out of this output. I only want to print out what is the name of the resource group, and I don't want to, let's say, go ahead get the location or the provisioning state or the tags or the resource ID. What I can do, I can say properties, I can say dot, and I can now go through the property and I can filter out a property with a name called resource group name. Why am I telling dot resource group name? Is because I have something called as a resource group name, which is a property of this particular variable called properties. So if I just go ahead and execute this line, so now I said properties dot resource group name. So I'm filtering it out one specific, let's say, property called resource group names. And now if you see, I have something like test01 and test02 as a property that is coming up right now. So it's now getting me all those properties, or it's now getting me all those values called, or let's say just the name values out here, which is test01 and test02 out here as such. So if I store it in a variable, I'll be able to perform, I'll be able to perform this particular operation. I'll be able to filter out the specific properties of that particular variable, because this variable, right, if you just execute it the way it is, it's just going to give you the entire body telling that, okay, fine, this is a test01 and then ECUS2 and provisioning status succeeded. Then you have resource group name and all these things out here as such. So this is how the property is actually returning me all these values out here. And if you do a dot resource group name, it's just going to go ahead and give you, or it's going to go ahead and print out those particular dot resource group names out here as such. Yes, any questions still here that I can take?
Yeah, the properties can be
Mhm.
dot location, dot tags. Can we give like that also?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
certainly. You can say either, because what you can do here is that these are the keys that are present as a part of the property. So you can take any key. You can say, okay, fine, I have something called as a dot location. So I can remove this out and I can say dot location. And if I execute this, then I get the location out here, or the resource ID. So you can filter out to those properties. You can also do something like properties dot count, your regular, let's say, string expressions. Is just going to tell you what is the count of the number of, let's say, objects that are present inside that particular property value out here as such. So yes, these are something that you can really go ahead and do out here as such on a property block.
I have a doubt. Can I ask?
Good, please. Good, please.
Yeah, in our last session, when you used
Mhm.
that get dot location, if there is no location present or if there is no name present, it's thrown error, right? Now, when we are
Correct.
running this get hyphen agent resource group, if there is no resource
Right.
group, it has to throw
Mhm.
error, but it's not throwing error. It's not showing error.
No, that's correct. See, you are not getting a specific resource group. That's a good question. You're not getting a specific resource group. You're just asking it to go ahead and run a command telling that, okay, fine, get all the resource groups that are there in the Azure portal. It says, okay, fine, you're not asking something specific. I'll just go to the Azure portal, check whether you have anything or not. If you don't, I'll throw an error. I'll just give you a null value. But if you want to do a specific resource group by saying hyphen name and say test03, which is not existing in the Azure portal, so you're asking Azure to give you, or you're asking Azure to give you back a value called test03. So it's searching for this particular value, one specific value. It's not finding that particular value, and it's telling, okay, fine, the resource group actually doesn't exist out there. So there is a
And
difference between a null value that is it is returning versus a specific value it is actually looking for. So this is where it will give you an error, versus this is where it won't give you an error if you do not have a resource group out here as such.
So for example, dollar properties dot
Mhm.
tags doesn't have a value. It should give an error, right? I think.
It should, or it will return a null value rather, because one thing you have to observe is that if I go to properties, right, there is a tag value, but it's just giving you a null, meaning there is a null value that is associated with tag. Even null is actually a value in PowerShell. So if you go ahead, put tags and then execute this out, it's just going to give you no values in return,
Okay.
because it has a property already called tags, right? So the property, the tag values, I mean, the property called tag is already there. But if you give something like XYZ, it should again return a null, because there is no property called XYZ out here as such. So either you do not have a property, or if you have a property, you do not have a value associated with it. PowerShell is just going to treat it as a null value out here as such.
But in the previous example also it is the same, right? Because the test 03, that is the value
Mhm.
for
Correct.
resource group key.
Mhm.
But in that case, it is throwing an error.
Mhm. Right, but in that case, it's throwing an error. Reason being, you're specifying to get something called as test03.
Okay, you are giving it. Okay.
Yes, I'm specifying it, telling that you know what the
All right, got
name
it, got it.
should be
Yeah.
simply test03. So that's the
Which
reason it's
doesn't
telling,
exist.
yes,
Okay.
which doesn't exist, and it's throwing an error out here as such.
It's a property that is a value.
Yes, true.
Tag is a property and test3 is specifically we are mentioning value. That's right. Right?
Exactly. Test3 is a
Kiran,
specific, let's say, good, please.
yeah. Thank you, Kiran. Thanks for clarification. One more doubt, Kiran.
Mm,
It's general doubt actually. I don't know whether I'll ask or not. It's a general
okay,
doubt. How will we define the null actually? As per what I understand is basically dollar null we have to give, right, to
correct,
check the why dollar,
correct.
because count length and all we are directly mentioning count or length like that, properties dot count
Hmm.
property, like why dollar
Correct.
null.
See, dollar null is a predefined variable. So dollar null here is a predefined variable in PowerShell. So if I just give this value, or if I just execute this out, it's just going to return me a null value out here. So what you can do is that you can use this particular null value expression along with one of your operators like equal to or not equal to, and then use that particular, let's say, expression out here. Now null value is a variable versus the object is a property, meaning if I go ahead into the properties, I can say dot something or dot that particular key called resource group name and so on and so forth. But this is now a predefined variable in PowerShell that we go ahead and use it along with our operators out here. We'll look at that as well in the coming sessions.
The properties is user defined, this is built in predefined.
Correct. That's correct. Yes, any more questions? Okay, let's do one thing. Now, I want to only go ahead and let's see this requirement out here right now. Get-AZ research group is going ahead and giving me all the research groups out here that are present on the Azure portal. Now, I want to only go ahead and get those resource groups that are there in an East-US location or in an East-US2 location. This is what I want to do. So I want my command to let's say perform a specific operation wherein I am trying to tell it that please go ahead, you get all the resource groups, but only that are running as a part of, let's say, ECS2 out here. This can be a requirement in your organization. You want to, let's say, go ahead, get all those resource groups and delete all those resource groups out here. So let me do one thing. Let me go ahead and create one more resource groups real quick here. I'll just say it is test03 that is running in ECS2 so that we have multiple objects that I can, let's say, show. So let me go ahead and create this out. Test03 again as a part of ECS2 is what I'm creating. This is created, and if I go back into my PowerShell and if I just go ahead and run this particular command, I now have test03, test02, and test01 also as a part of this particular output. Now my question, guys, is that from a previous session or from your practice, can you go ahead and tell me what can I do to go ahead and only get those resource groups that are running as a part of ECS out here? Anyone? So this
That are
command is
running as
written
part of, sorry.
that are running as a part of this location called EastUS2. That's the requirement that I have. So I only want to filter out resource groups that are in EastUS2 out here.
I think we need to put a if condition, right?
Mhm. Okay, you can put an if condition.
If
And what can we do if here? Yes, go ahead, please.
If location,
Okay.
dollar
If
location, no,
dollar
location
location,
equal to
okay, location equal to
So
equal
get
to
agent location equals to get agent location equals to central
So
central.
locations,
okay. But why do we even want to run this command called get-az location? Because this command is in which way is returning a property called location. Can't we not use that? Because right now, if I just execute this out,
yeah,
I have something
location
called
dot
test. Yes, is
uh,
it location dot
properties
or
dot
is it
location.
properties dot location?
Properties dot
So
location.
just
Yeah,
location. So if I say if, I can say properties dot location
equals to.
is equal to, in quotes, I'll say east US2, and I can go ahead and write. I can say write host, and I can say name of the resource group
Is properties
is
dot properties dot resource group name.
resource group name, but this is inside the code, so I'll say dollar of dollar properties
Yeah, or outside quotations you can also write.
or outside quotations. Yes, you can go ahead and write it in that way. So resource group name. If I just go ahead and execute this, and I mean, if I just go ahead and execute this if statement, this is going to tell me, okay, fine, let me see why isn't it just giving me one resource group. Let's see, test 02,
There are
and
two actually. There are two.
there
THS,
should be two.
TS.
Correct, there should be two equal to something. Let's see, properties dot location is equal to something. Okay, so let's see, why is it only giving me one right now? Let's look at this one, and since it's two, okay, yeah. Oh, fine, fine. Sorry, I did not look the
It's giving
command
two,
earlier.
right?
Sorry, yeah, yeah, it's giving two. Sorry, I did not look at the command. I just looked at test 02 right now. So my bad. So yes, it is giving two. So it's saying test 01 and then test 02 out here. See, this is one way of doing it, wherein you can go and write something called as an if condition. The other way, which is a more fine-lined way, a more filtered way out here, is I can put something called as a pipeline. So earlier we discussed what is a pipeline. We said get service and we said where object. So I can put a pipeline, and now I can again go ahead use the same PowerShell logic that I had earlier called where object. And I can say, instead of representing the entire thing, instead of let's say giving the entire if statement out here, I can say dollar underscore dot location is equal to east US2. Now, if I run this statement, I am now getting only those resource groups which are a part of, let's say, that particular location called east US2 out here, which is 01 and 03. So isn't this something that I can do? Because instead of writing this entire if loop, I can just go ahead and give a condition here telling that, you know what, where object, please go ahead and select this particular location out here called ECS2, equating it to ECS2 out here such. And I'm going ahead and getting only those resource groups out here called 01 and 03 out here as such. So isn't this something that I can do without, let's say, writing the if loop? Because again, this
Yeah,
if condition, right? If I go please.
but if you want only the resource group name, so you are getting the entire object, right? Here.
I'm
So
getting the
you can
entire
just
object out
modify.
here, yes. Which means that I can put one more pipeline here,
Hmm.
saying that, you know what, don't give me the entire object, but rather select one particular property. So select space resource group name. Now if I execute this out, now I'm getting only the resource group name right now as a
Yeah.
property, and it's only filtering that out. So I can be using multiple pipes here and throwing in all my commands inside that particular pipeline, and this is going to go ahead and give me all the resource groups that are existing on the, or all the resource groups that are existing on the Azure portal, which are a part of the ECS2 location out here as such. So
So what
this
is
is
this
how I can.
dollar underscore dot, Kiran? I mean, can you explain once? I
Sure. So
forgot it
I'll
actually.
do that dollar underscore dot. So what exactly is dollar underscore dot out here? Is that this dollar underscore dot just represents the entire output that is populated out by this particular command. So this command is giving you, let's say, the entire object called resource group name and etc. And instead of, let's say, calling this command once again, I am just using something called as an alias. So I can represent my entire output in that particular alias. So if we do a dollar underscore, then it's going to give you the entire output the way it is. But if I'm doing a dollar underscore dot and just calling the location value, I'm only getting that particular location and I'm equating it to something like east to west 2 and I'm filtering it out those things. And finally, I'm applying a select command. I'm saying a select
Can we also
and
do
I'm
like
saying
this? Where hyphen object dollar
Mhm.
underscore dot resource group name directly?
Yes, we can definitely do that. So we can do something like, for example, you want only the test 01 as a resource group out here,
No, no, I mean I
and the
can, instead
continue
of dot location, if I put resource group name equals to East US. Sorry,
right, if I say
location, that
resource
is,
group name,
no, 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 no. Okay.
location property, right? So I cannot do a resource group name is equal to ECUS until and
Yeah, yeah,
unless you
yeah, I
have a
got it. Yeah.
resource group which is called ECUS2, you cannot do that. So I have to put it as a location because I'm filtering it out with that specific property out here as such. And then I'm selecting that's something called as resource group out here as such. Yes, any question? So instead of having this entire if condition wherein you go ahead and declare all these things out, I can just go ahead and simply put, let's say, multiple pipes here, and I can go ahead and filter out those particular properties here as such. Yes. Anyone, any more
Then
questions here?
Kiran,
Good,
location.
please.
you are saying that dollar underscore, it's look like a this command in Java like that, right?
Correct. Kind of,
Shell,
yes. It's
shell,
like this
shell.
command. It's like an alias. That's right.
Okay.
Yes. Anyone, any questions?
Kiran, can't we use filter here?
Where exactly? I'm sorry. Can you come again, please? Can I use filter here? Yes. I mean this is a filtration, meaning I am going ahead and doing a filtration out here as such, wherein I am just going ahead and telling what I want to filter out exactly. So I'm just going ahead and giving the filter out here as such here. So instead of doing a dot, I'm just going ahead and putting multiple objects here, and I'm just going ahead and putting multiple, let's say, conditions after the, let's say, uh, the pipeline, and I'm just going in and getting those things out here as such. Yes, any more questions here? Anyone, any more questions here? So now see, let's see. I have
Here,
good, please.
normally in C or Java, something we will, the starting of the program, we will write like standard input, output, import, standard stdio,
Correct.
something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there like do we need to import like that in PowerShell also before using any of the functions like say stdio?
No, no, you don't have to. Reason being, see, PowerShell is not a pure object-oriented programming language. It's rather a scripting class. So that's the reason you do not have to, let's say, write all those things out here in the beginning.
So it's already there. Whatever we want to use, we can write and use it. No need to import.
Correct. No, you don't have to. All right. So let's see. If I now execute this just command out here, uh, and I look at something called properties. Now my properties is giving me something like a resource group name, which is test 01 and test 03. The requirement here was something like this. Please go ahead and get all the resource groups that are there as a part of ECS2 location and delete them. I don't want, let's say, resource groups running as a part of ECS2 location out here. Now, in order to delete a particular object in PowerShell, or in order to delete a particular object in, let's say, Azure using PowerShell, the command here is remove. So for get, we said get hyphen. For creating something, we said new hyphen. And for removing something, I'm telling remove hyphen. And I want to remove something called AZ resource group. I want to go ahead and remove this particular resource group out here, or I mean, I want to remove those resource groups out here as such, and I'll say hyphen name, and in the name, I'll say dollar properties, because has all the names out here. So I'll say dollar properties, and if I can just execute this out, now this is the error that I get. It is telling me cannot convert that particular system dot object to a type called system dot string required by this particular parameter called name. Did we encounter this error earlier? And what does this really represent out here as such?
We have two resource group.
That's right. But what does this exactly represent here? It's saying
It
cannot
says,
convert something to something.
yeah, array to string. I mean, you are trying to convert it.
Exactly. It's telling, or it's rather telling, that this particular remove hyphen easy resource group command that you go ahead and run. So if I just
That
go
gives
ahead
an
and
array.
take this, or it's rather, yes, that's correct. The properties is an array. The properties that I have is an array. So if I just go ahead and understand the documentation of this particular command, it's expecting the name or the ID to be a string. It's like a string value what it's expecting, but I'm ending up passing something called as an array, which is not acceptable by this command. And if I look at dollar properties dot get type,
It's
this
an
is now
array.
an array out here. So it's an array that I'm basically processing. And in order to convert this array into a string once again, I have to iterate over this particular array by using either a for loop or a for each loop or a do while loop, so on and so forth. So I'll do a for each. I'll say for each. Again, syntax here is for each, open close parenthesis and open close brackets. In the for each, I'll say for each dollar name in properties. Then I'll go ahead and say this entire line, which is remove hyphen is the resource group. And in place of properties, I'll give dollar name out here. Let me see if this works. So I'm saying properties, and property is an array value because there are multiple resource groups out here. So then I'm getting my for each loop out here. I'm saying for each, and I'm using a value called dollar name in that particular properties, and I'm just trying to remove that particular name. So let's go ahead and execute this out and see. Now it's telling, okay, fine. Are you sure you want to remove the resource group? I'll say yes. And again, it's telling, are you sure you want to remove the resource group? I'll say yes, and now it kind of fails. Now, can anyone tell me why is this failing? What exactly are we not doing right?
Because we
Is
are
it
not passing that array place index array index name of 0 or something like
okay?
that.
I have to do that provided I am doing a for each or I'm doing a for loop. But right now I'm into a for each looping out here as such. So then what exactly is this really looking for?
Is it looking for dollar actually?
Is it looking for dollar? Let's try to do this once again. And let's see what the command really tells you. So it's telling, do you see, are you sure you want to remove the resource group? Which is at the rate something like this. It's telling
Okay.
at the
That's
rate.
an array actually.
Yes, it's it's an array that it is getting out here. Reason being, you are processing an array. So let's go ahead and do one thing. So I'll say suspend. Before I go ahead and actually remove the resource group, let me understand one thing, and I'll say write hyphen host. I'll say name of the RG is dollar name. I'll say for yellow so that we understand how this really works out. I'll just comment this out. I'm not running this out. Let me run this for each loop right now. And this is how your name is actually coming out to be. So what you're doing is that you're trying to remove a name with this particular pattern telling @resource group name is equal to test01, and PowerShell is treating this entire thing to be the name, and it's telling, you know what, I am not able to find this pattern. There is no resource group with something called something like this. There is no resource group like that. So I'm sorry, I don't understand what you really want me to do out here as such. What I can do to avoid this is, let's look at the properties. Properties is giving me something like resource group name, and under that I have resource group names out here. I can say properties dot resource group name. I can filter out that particular property name out here, and now I'm getting this particular test1 and test3. So do you see the difference between just the properties and properties dot resource group name?
So
Properties
we
is
should
giving me an
give dot
object.
resource.
Yes, exactly. Dot resource group name is something that we have to give. So either you can give the dot here. You can say name dot resource group name, or you can say dot, sorry, same, dot
Resource group.
resource group name inside that particular for each loop out here. And now if I execute this out, it's now telling the name of the RG is test01, test03, getting the particular name out here. And then I can uncomment this out, and I can run this out once again. And now again, see, whenever you kind of try to remove it, whenever you try to do a delete operation on PowerShell, it's going to return a command telling that, you know what, are you really sure you want to remove this out? And if you have 100 different resource groups, right, you'll have to come here, click this out, yes, 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 and so on and so forth. But the idea of automation was itself to go ahead and reduce the human intervention, right? So I don't want this pop-up to come every time. I'm pretty sure I want to delete this out. So in order to bypass that particular pop-up, you can, in this particular command called remove -e resource group, do a space and say -force. You want to force this out, or you want to, let's say, bypass that particular comment out. And I can now go ahead, run this out here as such. Now I don't get that particular pop-up telling, are you sure you want to delete this out? Now what Azure is now going to do, or not, sorry, what PowerShell is now going to do is that it's going to talk to the Azure portal. It's going to check for that particular resource group with this particular name called test01, delete it out, and it will wait until the resource group is completely deleted. So deletion of a resource group takes like about a minute or so, or takes like a minute or two or so. Even though if you go ahead into the Azure portal and use that particular delete button, it'll still take 1 or 2 minutes. And until the resource group is completely not deleted from the Azure portal and the provisioning state is deleted, this command will run. And at the end of deletion, it's just going to give you a Boolean value, meaning whether it deleted or not. Boolean here is true or false. This is going to tell you true if the resource group is deleted. It's going to tell you false if the resource group is not deleted out here as such. Again, it will take some time. Reason being, deletion always takes time in Azure. Like whatever resource that you look at, deletion has to, let's say, completely remove the location and all these things out. So deletion takes time. So as you see, if I go into test01 right now, it's telling resource group not found. It will be in this state for some time. Though the resource group is deleted, you'll still be able to see the name. It will be in this state for some time, and once it's completely deleted, PowerShell is going to return something like true out here, and then it's moving on to the next resource group, telling it is test03. Do the same thing there, and then return a value called true out here as such.
So if you
Yes.
have more
Any question?
resources or objects within the
Mhm.
resource group, it is going to take even more time, right? I think to clean up all that.
Yes. Yes. It's yes, kind of, yes, that's true.
One other question, Kiran. Resource groups can be in any region, right? And the resources can be in other region. They don't have a
Correct.
dependency. Right? Okay.
They don't have a dependency. That's correct. Yes. Any more questions here, guys? Let's look at this. So firstly, I did a connect. Then I did a set. Then I use something called properties in order to get resource groups that are running specifically as a part of east to west location. And then I did a for each loop in order to go ahead and remove those resource groups out here as such. So this is what I have in, let's say, in an end-to-end, let's say, script out here as such, to go ahead and remove those resource groups out here that are running as a part of the portal.
So instead of -force, -y doesn't work. I mean, in PowerShell.
-y
Yes,
doesn't work
yeah.
because the command here supports something called as force parameter out here as such.
Okay.
So we will have to pass a hyphen force out here as such to completely bypass that particular window. Yes, anyone, any questions here? Any questions till here? Anyone who's not following, or anyone who has any questions with any command till here? Anyone, anything? Anything?
Oh,
Yes, again,
anything.
yes, go please.
Anything. So can we move the resource group from one location to another location?
Let's see, can we move the resource group to one location to the other location? Let's check from the Azure portal. Sorry, let's check from the Azure portal if you are able to do that. Location. If you want to move a resource group from one location to the other location, the only thing that you can do is to go first, delete the resource group, and then recreate it in a different location. The option to move a resource group is not really available, or the option to move a resource in general is not available. So that's let's say the hard and fast rule out here set by Microsoft is that you cannot migrate it from one region to the other. You have to delete and recreate it back again. That's the, let's say, condition out here as such. So moving or migrating or changing the location is not allowed for any resource you take, either it be a virtual network or let's say a resource group, anything. It cannot be possible.
And storage account blob also, correct?
Whichever it is, yes. So whichever resource that you deal with, you cannot migrate it into a different location out here as such. Good, please. Someone else had a question. Good, please. I am not able to follow your question. If you have one, can you please speak up a little bit louder? Okay, let's come back into our script and let's again go here. This should be cleaned up by now, and both the resource groups should be deleted. And this is the output it should have given. It's telling true, and then it went ahead and let's say gave me something like this. So it gave me a true value out here, telling that okay, fine, it is true. I deleted this out and so on and so forth. Now let's come back here. Just put in one more script, and now let's increase the length of a script a little bit to understand what we can do with, let's say, PowerShell on the end-to-end basis out here. So this is what I have. See, I have a client uh, telling Uber or Ola or someone like that, I'm working for a project, and that particular client came back to me and tell that, and he's telling that, you know what, I want a script, or I want you to write a script which can take my input. Meaning, I as a client, I want to give the input to this particular script, telling that I want a resource, telling that I want a resource group with the name called test, or Uber, or Ola, or some random name. The ask here is that if you give an input to that particular script, the script should check if the resource group already exists on the Azure portal. So I am a client, I'm passing something called test. The first thing it should do is that it should check whether that particular resource group called test is there on the Azure portal. If it's not there, it should not throw an error, and it should create a new one. These things we saw already. We said get hyphen easy resource group hyphen name, and if that particular name is null, we said okay fine, name is null, then we'll go ahead and create one. But how do I let PowerShell take my input? Until now, we let PowerShell go ahead and write an output by using something called write hyphen host, wherein I said PowerShell that, you know what, in this terminal, go ahead and write whatever I print, or go ahead and write whatever I give out here as such. The other way around to this is called read hyphen host, meaning read from that particular input, or read that from that particular terminal, and in here I'll say ask the name of RG. You can say anything. And if I go just run this line out, now if you see, it's running that particular command, and if you see here, the script is waiting for my input. The script right now is waiting here in this particular terminal for my input, telling that, you know what, you are now allowed to go ahead and pass the input out here. So now if I go ahead and do that, I can say something like sample RG. I'll say enter. What this command does is very simple. Whatever input you pass, it'll just go ahead and display it out here as such. Instead of that, what you can do is you can say $name is equal to. What I'm doing is that I'm telling whatever the user is passing in this particular, let's say, read host, please go ahead and store it inside something called $name. So if I pass in something called sample RG, please equate a $name is equal to sample RG. Whenever you run $name, you get something called sample RG out here. So which means if I now execute this line, it's telling, okay, fine, please pass the name of the resource group. I'll say sample RG. It won't print it out. Rather, if you now say $name will be equal to sample RG out here as of now. And if I execute it out once again, I'll say sample2. And now I look at something called $name. $name will hold the value called sample2 out here as such. So each and every time the name is being overridden out here as such out there. So this is what my read host statement is really doing right now. So any questions in the read host before I move forward? Any questions on what I'm doing with the read host out here as such? Okay. Now tell me guys, how do I check whether the resource group exists or not with this particular name that my client is passing? How can I check whether that particular resource group is there or not on the Azure portal out here as such?
It should invoke the script. I mean, earlier one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how should it invoke the script? Like how should, or what do I need to do out here as such?
If
So
property
path of the script.
Mhm.
Path of the script, let's say untitled 2.ps1, right?
Okay. Okay.
We need to execute that script.
Not really. I want to write a script. Let's say I forget about this particular script out here. Here I was just getting that particular properties and so on and so forth. Let's say I want to forget about this script, but rather I want to now check what is, or I want to, let's say, just write this out, telling if that particular resource group is there, don't create it. If it's not, then go ahead and create it out here as such.
And then if condition again. So
Great. So if I say if, let's say if and else, exactly. So it's if condition followed by an else.
yeah.
That's correct. But what should I pass inside the if? Or what is the
If
condition that I need?
AZ resource group equal to null.
Okay. AZ resource group is equal to null.
AZ hyphen, right? I think AZ.
Or is it get hyphen AZ resource group?
Get hyphen. Yeah.
Hyphen AZ resource group. But this get hyphen AZ resource group is going to get everything on the portal. It's not
name,
getting me that's
dot name.
dot name, or is it hyphen name? Is it hyphen
Dot,
name out here?
hyphen name. Okay.
Hyphen name
Equals hyphen
and dollar
equals
name.
dollar name hyphen equals to
Dollar name.
Dollar name, yeah.
Dollar
Dollar
name.
name that we
Exactly.
are passing it. Yeah, correct.
Yes. So instead of doing all these things, I can say dollar status and put it inside this particular variable so that my if loop is easier for me to understand. Because now I can say if dollar status, because the status is giving me what is the status of that particular resource group, isn't it? So this
Yeah.
will just make things a little easier. And I'll put one more thing called error action. If I don't get the resource group, I want to silently continue before, because I know that I'm going forward and I don't want to throw the error to the client. This is what the client is telling me, that it should not throw the error if it's not there. You should just go ahead and create it out. So I'll say if the status is equal to null, status can only be equal to null if this command doesn't give a value in written, and the command only cannot give a value in written when the resource group is not there in the Azure portal. I'll say write host. I'll just print a message to the client telling $name or resource group with the name or resource group $name doesn't exist. Creating a new one. And I can say new hyphen isn't resource group hyphen the name of the resource group $name hyphen. I'll just hard code my location here, telling it is East US2, something like this. Or I can also go ahead, give a dollar location, asking the client to pass the location. Even that is possible. But here I'm just going in and hard coding it, telling if it's equal to null, else I can say write host.
Right host resource group name is
Already exists. So this particular resource group already exists out here. The resource group with the name dollar name already exists in the Azure portal. So now if I execute this entire thing, it starts with something called parser name. I'll say sample RG. As and when I process it, it's now telling sample RG doesn't exist on the Azure portal. I'm creating a new one for you, created a new one. If I execute this once again, so let me do one thing. I'll save this out and also execute it in the other way. I'll save the script out and I'll say this is something like RG creation dot ps1. So what you can do, guys, is that instead of just going ahead and executing this, even this will work. Even execution works out. It's just going ahead and calling this particular script. Or if you want to call this script in a altogether a different terminal, altogether a different PowerShell out here. Let's say if I open up my Windows PowerShell, the other application that I do have, I can just go ahead into that path. So what I can do right now is that the other way of calling this out is this, is I can go into this particular path, which is called E PowerShell class 1 junk. So I can say a CD into that particular path, change directory, and I can call my scripts by using a dot backslash. So using a dot backslash, what I did here right now is that I did a control and space. It's loading all the files that are there here. And I'll say rg creation.ps1. I'll say enter, pass the name of the resource group. I'll say sample rg, checking whether that particular resource group is there or not. And then it's executing, or it's then going ahead and telling, okay, fine, the resource group is there, or the resource group is executed. Now it's telling resource group with the name sample rg already exists on the Azure portal. So I don't want to create this out. And if I want to, let's say, go ahead and pass a different name called sample rg1, then I execute this out. It's telling rg with the name doesn't exist, so I'll create one for you. It's taking a bit of time, and it's creating this out here for me as such. So I can call my scripts on a different terminal also. I have written my script, stored it somewhere. I'm calling my script by using dot backslash rg creation dot ps1, and I'm calling my entire script into a different terminal, and I'm, let's say, processing that particular script out here as such. I can also do that. So my script is written here. It's just an editor. I'm just running it out on a different PowerShell terminal. I'm just calling that particular script, telling dot backslash, call that particular file. And here, the first line itself tells you read host, pass the name of that particular resource group out here as such. Yes, any questions still here? Anyone, any questions that I can take till here? Anyone, anything till here? Anything that is confusing or anything that I can address? Anyone, anything till here? So what do we do to write the output? What is the command to go ahead and write the output, guys?
Write
Versus read
host,
the output? Yes, write
read
host
host.
versus read host. So to write something, I am like writing the host, and to read something, meaning to take the user input, I do something called read host out here as such. But one quick thing is that, see, your read host might not work in all the case scenarios. This is something that I'll give you a quick warning out here, is that the read host might not work in all the cases. What do you mean by the read host doesn't work in all the cases out here? See, read host expects PowerShell to work on an interactive terminal. For read host to work, PowerShell, wherever you run PowerShell, it supports something called interactive terminal out here, like this, wherein PowerShell is waiting for your input, and once you interact with it, or once you interact with PowerShell, that's where it's telling, okay, fine, I'll take the input and then I'll go and create something. But if you run the same script using something like Azure DevOps, a later point in time, we will use Azure DevOps in order to run our PowerShell scripts also, in order to create our resources using automatic approach, automated pipelines, and all these things. So when you run your script by using some kind of a DevOps practice, or in a system that doesn't support interactive terminals out here, the statement will right away fail, telling that, you know what, PowerShell, I'm sorry, PowerShell will not help in, or PowerShell doesn't support something like interactive terminal in this particular session. So I cannot use this particular statement out here. What happens right now is that my entire operation is breaking just because of something called read host. The other way of passing this out, in case interactive terminals are not supported, or to be honest with you all, 99% of the times, or 99.99% of the times, we don't use the statement called read host, because we know that it will break. We know that at some point it's going to break, and it is expecting the user to pass all these things explicitly, to go ahead and, let's say, into the terminal explicitly out here as such. The other way of doing this, instead of, let's say, using the read host statement out here, for non-interactive terminals, we use a concept called parameterization. Meaning, this is a parameter, or this is a variable that my script wants. What I can do is, even before my script starts, I can declare something called as a param block. Something called param, open and close parenthesis. Now, if I explain this here, it will look a little confusing. So I'll open up a new script, and here we'll take in what is parameterization, and we'll try to apply the same thing out here. Meterization. What exactly is this? Example, if you want to if you want to declare a parameter, I'll say param, open and close parenthesis, and let's say I want to declare a parameter called name. So what I'll do is that inside this particular, let's say, quotations, I say $name, and I'll just do a write host, telling write host, my name is $name, and I'll say save. I'll say param.ps1. Now I have a parameter, or I have declared something called as a param block in open and close parenthesis, and inside which I'm just passing in something called $name out here. So I'm doing a $name, and I'm saying write host, my name is $name out here. Now you as a user are now allowed to pass this particular parameter during the runtime execution. What do I mean by that? So let's go back into our PowerShell once again. I'll just do a clear screen. I have the script in the same folder, so I'll say dot backslash, and after doing a dot backslash, I'm saying control plus space out here, in order to load what are all the files inside this particular, let's say, folder, and I'll say param.ps1, I'll say enter. See, when you do a param.ps1 and do an enter, right, it's saying my name is blank value. Reason being, you never pass this particular value or you never declare this particular value anywhere in your script. What you can do is using this particular script or using this particular command line, you can say space hyphen dollar space out here. So when I'm doing a dollar space, it's automatically loading that particular name, or it's telling, you know what, the script has a parameter with a value called dollar name. Do you want to pass it? Once I pass this, see, it's telling my name is Kiran, whatever name that I passed it inside this particular command line out here. Now I can also do one thing. I can say I belong to dollar location, and here what I can do is I can declare a location, let's say parameter also, by doing a comma separated value. I can say dollar location. You can, give it in the next line, or you can give it in the same line. Anything is okay, but it has to be a comma separated value out here. And now if I run the same script once again, so if I call the same script, so dot backslash sorry, dot backslash param dot ps1, I'll say hyphen control space. Now it's telling what is, let's say, the value that you want. Is it name? Is it location? So put in a name. I'll say Kiran. I'll put again a location. So again I said hyphen dollar control space. It took the location out here. I'll say HYD Hyderabad. Now it's telling, okay, fine, my name is Kiran. I belong to something called as Hyderabad out here as such. You can go ahead and declare multiple parameter values. You can have multiple parameter values inside your script, and all these parameters are passed to the incoming commands, and this has to be declared right in the starting. Like it's like a header. You have to declare right in the starting out here, and you can you can pass it to your scripts by calling your script space hyphen the name of the parameter out here as such. Yes, any questions till here? Anyone, any questions that I can take till you?
Kiran, whatever you explained, that is dynamic. If we need a static, we can declare here itself that Kiran and
Yes,
Hyderabad and dollar
you
name
can
equals
say,
to.
yes, you can say dollar name is equal to Kiran,
Yeah,
location
this is
is equal
static.
to Hyderabad. It's a static declaration out here. And now if you just go ahead and run the script out, it's going to say my name is Kiran, I belong to Hyderabad. But if you go ahead and pass something here, Pune and Suresh, it's going to override what is the existing value. So you can give a default value in your script and override it again using, let's say, your terminal out here as such. So earlier when I just executed it, just done one simple execution, saying my name is Kiran, I belong to Hyderabad. Reason being, Kiran and Hyderabad are the default values. So if you don't pass anything, it will take those values. But if you pass something, it will override the defaults using the parameters that you have passed during the runtime. Does this help? Anyone, any questions till here? Anyone, any questions that I can take till you?
We don't need to mention the length, Kiran. If we give 200 characters also, it will take as it is.
Yes, it will take. You don't really have to mention the length out there, but you can mention the length by setting up, let's say, something like minimum value, maximum value, and so on and so forth. You can do that. But even if you pass in multiple, let's say, characters here, it will accept it out here as such.
This one will
Yes.
only output to the console, right? I mean, whatever we are giving, the dynamic values.
Correct.
I think later when we see the bigger scripts, I mean, these parameters can be passed and it takes the value to execute. For example, you have different environments, production, dev, test, and all that. So if you
Yes.
parameterize and give that value, you should go ahead
Correct.
and put that value and execute that environment, right? That is the whole
Exactly.
idea.
That's the whole idea. That's correct. That's the whole idea of declaring my parameters in the first place, so that I can override them as and when needed. Now this is
Kiran,
the
I have a doubt, Kiran.
Go ahead, please.
You said that read host is not a suggestible, and
Correct.
99% we won't use because it will break.
Correct.
Now, even here also, we are through, even we are using runtime through, sorry, to write host in the runtime, we are giving right here, right? Values we are passing, right?
Not really. So
It won't break, it won't break. What is the
no,
difference, Kiran?
it won't break out here. Reason being, I'm passing the values before my script gets executed. See, what I'm doing is I'm calling my script and I'm passing those before my script actually gets executed out here. So I'm doing a $ps1. I'm calling my script, and before actually my script gets executed, I'm going and passing all these values out here, which means that this is non-interactive, which means all I have to do is pass this out once. I can store it somewhere. For example, you can simply go ahead, store everything somewhere, telling that, dot backslash. See what is the directory that I'm working on right now. And this is the directory that I want to. And if I just go ahead, store this value somewhere called param.ps1, and all I can do right now, I'll say execute.ps1. I can do it in multiple ways. So I can just call this script called execute.ps1. It still works, which means that what I'm trying to do out here is that I'm using this particular script, or I'm calling this particular script and passing my values during the runtime before the script gets executed. It's a non-interactive mode. Read host only works when you have an interaction supported, an interactive terminal that is supported. That's the biggest difference, and that's the reason we don't really go for a read host when you want to pass an input to a particular script. We rather do it in a parameter approach, or we rather try to parameterize it out. And that's your question, Mahesh, is what's the difference between read host and param. Read host only works when you have interactive terminal supported. Parameter works even with non-interactive terminals out here as such. Yes, any more questions here? So let's try to apply this to our script earlier, which is RG creation, wherein I don't want a read host at all in the first place. So what I can do is I can say param $name. You can see, what, this is a parameter called $name, and a name here is the name of the resource group, and I'm expected to pass this name, let's say during the runtime. I'll say control S, control save to save the script. Status, it's whatever name that you're passing during that particular, let's say, execution. It's taking that name, checking whether the resource group exists or not, and then it's going ahead and telling, yes, it is existing, I won't create it, or no, it is not existing, I will create it, in the form of if else statements out here. So now if I call this particular script, let's do one thing, let's say dot backslash, and I'll say rg create or rg creation.ps1. I can say space hyphen the name, and if I don't pass it, it's going to throw me an error telling that this parameter is missing, so I cannot create something for you. I'll say something like param rg. I'll say enter. Now it's going inside the script, it's telling resource group param rg doesn't exist, so creating a new one. It's taking that and going ahead and creating a new one out here for me as such. So this is how I am going ahead and making use of something called as a parameter block for my advantage to go ahead and create all these things out here as such. Yes, any questions still here? Anyone, any questions still here as such? Anything that I can take on what is a parameter block and how is it better when compared to something like a read host statement out here as such? Anyone, anything, any questions that I can take till you? Any questions that I can take till here?
Then I don't know. Like I'm asking general question. Okay.
Okay.
Suppose we wrote a script from
Okay.
starting
Okay.
where from subscription. Then blobs or a storage.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Mm-hmm.
all the hierarchy written.
Mm-hmm.
Smallest is Kiran. Smallest is
A resource group.
resource group
Yeah,
is
the
this.
smallest is a resource group, correct? Mm-hmm.
Now, after creating the subscription or something, due to some network issues, the script got failed. Is there a
Okay.
recovery? Can we recover that one, Kiran? Like how we can recover that?
When you say recover, so what exactly you mean by recover? I mean, meaning, say, let's say you're execute, sorry, let's say you're executing a script, and for some reason your internet connection, lost your internet connection. You had a power cut, you lost your internet connection. The script is going to fail. The next time you execute, it will go ahead and try to check whether the resource group exists or not. And this time around, it won't create it. It'll rather tell you that, it's already there, so I don't want to do that. So one thing is that whenever you run a PowerShell script, it starts from the line one. Whenever you do that, it goes ahead and does a line one out here, from line one to line last. So you cannot tell PowerShell that, ignore all these lines, just start from line or line 9. You have to, or PowerShell is an imperative approach.
Okay,
The
Kiran. So
user
it is
is
better.
expected to, yes.
So it is
Yeah, please.
better to write always before creating any of the resource group or subscription. It is better to check whether it's present or not before.
Exactly. It's always suggested to check whether it exists or not, and then go ahead and execute your scripts out here. And the more right host that you write in your script, the better it is, because if your script fails at some line, you'll be able to understand what is right host statement after which it failed, or where did it really fail out here, which will help you understand how your script is actually progressing and where you need to debug this out as such.
Basically, first we can use for debugging and what line, what is the output, and what debugging.
Yes.
For debugging, right host is useful.
It's useful for not only debugging but also for your output also, like it's your understanding how your script is actually going, where your script is, and so on and so forth. But yes, for debugging purpose also, you can use a right host out here as such.
So which means, I mean, if the
Mhm.
script fails at the last line
Okay.
due to some reason, whatever resources are before that, they will be created already, right?
Yes, they will be created, that's true. So all the
And it will
resources
not
until
roll
that
back.
point, yes. No, it won't roll back. It will not roll back. So this is not unlike a SQL script, because when you try to execute a SQL and it fails, it roll backs the entire deployment out here. So unlike that, it won't roll back. It will provision your resources because all those commands have already been executed. It'll provision all those resources and it will fail, and it will not create a resource that got failed. Yes, any more questions, guys? Anyone? Any more questions that I can take till here? All right. So before coming down to this session tomorrow, so we will again have a session tomorrow. I don't want to, let's say, take the full 2 hours. I have, let's say, a good amount of time, 15 minutes right now. To if you have any questions, I can take those questions right now. But if you don't, please make sure that before coming to tomorrow's session, just go ahead and see how to create a storage account using PowerShell. Let's move forward from a resource group. So we did all that for each loop application on a resource group level. Now we want to see how to create a storage account in Azure using PowerShell. Just do a Google search. The documentation is going to tell you how exactly you want to how exactly you want to create this out. Do you want to do it via the portal, or do you want to do it via PowerShell? So if you just scroll down, it's telling you on the portal how do you go ahead into, let's say, the resource groups created. Or if you want to do a PowerShell, it's going to tell you what do you need. Firstly, you need a resource group. Then you need, let's say, to create a storage account. or there is something called CLI. We'll talk about that. It's something called CLI, bicep and temp, and let's say something like a template and so on and so forth. So just go ahead and look at PowerShell for now. Understand what they're expecting you to pass and how is it expecting you to pass. And using these commands, right, the basic commands, try to see, sorry, try to see if you are able to pass something like a parameter block here. This is a basic command that they are giving. So today we learned about what is parameters. See whether you can implement parameters and create a resource group if not existing, and then go ahead and provision a storage account inside that particular resource group. And the basic command here is new hyphen az storage account. This is what I want you all to check this out. Yes, anyone, any questions?
I have one doubt regarding
Good, please.
last
Good, please.
configuration of virtual networks.
Mhm.
Even I try to open my storage account, I can't open that. How can we open
Yes,
again?
sir. Yes, you cannot open your storage account if it's protected via a virtual network. So if you want to open it right away, please go ahead and whitelist your IP address. So only then you'll be able to open up that particular, or only then you'll be able to bypass that particular firewall that is set up out there. So you have to go inside networking and put your IP address out there in that particular networking, and that's going to help you bypass the firewall out here as such. Yes, any more questions, guys? Anyone, any questions? Okay, so tomorrow we'll have the class at the same time. I'll talk to the institute and get the session scheduled. And we will have a holiday on Monday on the occasion of Diwali. So on Monday we'll take an off, and from Tuesday we'll start continuing the classes once again. And from Tuesday again, we'll come down to our theories. And on the weekends we'll go ahead and let's say the PowerShell scripting. The reason that I put it is the same reason. It takes a lot of time for me to, let's say, put each and every line out here and re-explain it once again. And there might be a lot of questions that can come up while doing a program. So in the best interest of time, I do not want to take it on a regular session. We'll do it on, let's say, on the weekends. So we will be firstly starting with PowerShell, then going into ARM, then seeing what is Terraform and etc. while coming through this particular approach. And the regular classes will be continuing, and we'll also see how to apply it onto our regular class out here as such. So that's the idea. So we'll have the session on the same time tomorrow. Uh, Please practice this out before you come down to tomorrow's session. And in tomorrow, we'll see how do you go and provision storage accounts. How do you create containers inside a storage account? How do you upload blobs using PowerShell script? What can you do, and so on and so forth out here as such. Until then, thank you guys and have a good day ahead. Thank you.